Alright, I'm gonna click on start live casting, okay?
And you don't want that.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Lansing, Michigan for the finals of Shirkeyball. For those of you who are unaware, Shirkeyball is the game where hard-working Michiganders try to get through Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey and cast their ballot. Shirkeyball was invented in Georgia and Mar-a-Lago. Let's meet the teams. First, he's a career politician who is sponsoring 39 pieces of voter suppression law from Jackson, Michigan, Michael Shirkey! Let's meet our first player. Teresa is a hard-working nurse from Kalamazoo who's planning to vote by mail. Because she's coming off a 36-hour shift, she is trying to drop off her ballot at a ballot drop-off location before the polls close at 8 p.m. She's headed to the ballot box to cast her vote, and she's rejected! On ballot rejection, Shirkey stops another legal Michigan vote. He's done this by passing a bill that would close ballot boxes at 5 p.m., even though polling places in Michigan close at 8 p.m. Oh well, sorry Teresa, better luck next election. Hopefully there wasn't anything important on your ballot. Our next player is Connie from Inkster. Connie has been voting by mail in Michigan for 30 years. She has a perfect voting record and never misses an election. She is someone who cares about participating in democracy. And just like that, Mike Shirkey rejects her completely. Mike Voter Suppression Shirkeyball does it again. This time passing a bill that would require a voter to send in a photocopy of their ID before being able to vote. Because everyone in Michigan surely has a copyright at their home, and hey, who cares that they don't? You can always have to make people pay money to get a photocopy of their ID to vote, because that's a small price to pay to keep the man in Mar-a-Lago happy with you. Finally, we have Mauricio from Traverse City. Mauricio is voting by mail this year, and he's even managed to get around some of Mike's shutdown voter suppression laws. Mauricio hasn't voted in a couple of years, but there's a millage on his ballot that he wants to help support to help fund his kids' schools. It looks like he'll score and win the game. He's got an open lane, and no! Mike Shirkey has done it again. He's pulled another voter suppression law of his hat by passing a law that requires overly specific and restrictive signature verification rules. Oh well, Mauricio. It's your fault that your signature on your driver's license has changed since you first signed it as a teen in 1998. Oh well, hopefully your kid's school will get the funding it needs. Well, that's halftime, folks, and Mike Shirkey is rejecting ballots left and right so far. It's all up to the voters of Michigan to band together and see if they can get around these laws.
Shirkey stinks. but we're not happy to have to be here today. I welcome you all to our demonstration against what we know to be egregious wrongs against the people of the state of Michigan. Yes. We are entitled to an unrestricted vote, but yet we have to come here to Lansing today to tell our legislators that we will not stand still for your foolishness. You will not take our vote from us because we are fired up.
Ready to go!
Fired up!
Ready to go!
All right, let's get a hand clap here. Woo! Yes. Now, we're going to have some speakers today, and we're going to begin with Mr. Steve James. And Mr. James is going to talk to us about why our current 39 votes of bills before the legislature in favor of voter suppression are just terrible. Mr. James, where are you? All right, come on down. All right. Give him a hand clap.
Good morning.
Morning.
In 2018, 2 out of every 3 voters in an historically high turnout election demanded that politicians stop messing around with voting rights. We had enough of the people in power determining who their voters were and decided as a state that we needed to forever enshrine our voters' Bill of Rights in the Constitution and put a stop to gerrymandering. Now, as we can see the last pillars of gerrymandering crumbling in public meetings across the state, the ones who benefited from so many of these anti-democratic voter manipulation tactics are clutching to anything they can for survival. In the middle of a pandemic and with a new election laws to implement, our completely capable election staff, along with 30,000 volunteers across the state, pulled off a miraculous feat. Under incredible scrutiny and in some cases violent threats, these men and women delivered on the fundamental democratic principle of providing safe and secure elections. Instead of celebrating our monumental achievement as a society, the losing side began a campaign of dangerous lies and have managed to convince a non-insignificant amount of people that it was in fact fraudulent. Under this false pretense, opportunists and white supremacists have introduced voting reforms in 47 states. These are not reforms. These are suppressions and restrictions, the complete antithesis of what we voted for in 2018. They further inject politics into elections administration through appointees and create confusion with competing election day deadlines. Providing a photocopy of your ID when requesting an absentee ballot application? I've already proven my identity when I registered to vote. This is duplicative and unnecessary. Unfunded mandates to provide surveillance on drop boxes without any evidence of wrongdoing? Elections are critical infrastructure and have never been funded to reflect that. In fact, these bills even go so far as to restrict clerks from seeking grant funds to help cover budget shortfalls caused by hoops like this that they have to jump through. They champion these voter suppression tactics with euphemism and vague language because obfuscation is necessary for them to win. They claim things like an election results deadline is good because we shouldn't have to wait for a week to get election results. But what they don't say is that that deadline is less than 24 hours after the polls close. And in areas with high turnout and restricted funding who rely on volunteers, they're not going to be able to make that deadline. And we at Michigan United know. We count every vote, right?
Yes.
If you want to have a real discussion about election security, let's start by actually talking about election security. These bills are voter suppression, plain and simple. To claim otherwise is disingenuous and harmful for our democracy.
He laid it all out for us. Now you know why we're here. We're going to have some testimonies today from people who are being directly affected by what are proposed laws for the state of Michigan's voting system. And I'd like to ask Alicia Morris from the city of Detroit to come down and tell her story. Alicia, give her a hand.
Good morning. They told me I was going to be last. Well, I'm here today as a black woman who stands on the shoulders of Martin Luther King, Andrew Young, John Lewis, and my grandmother. Every person of color stands on their shoulders. And because of that, we're standing on these steps today. Let me tell you about my grandmother. She was one of 12 siblings. She was the middle child. They were all very close. They helped pay for each of them to go to college, and they shared stories, they shared everything. They took care of each other's children. But when my grandmother was 20, she made the hard decision with my grandfather to move to Nebraska from Arkansas. That's because she wanted to be able to vote with no problems. She wanted an easier life. She heard the stories from her siblings and her parents about how hard it was for them to vote, having to count marbles in jars, had to recite the Constitution, and all kinds of other stuff to suppress their vote. So she moved. No, it's not. So Grandma moved to Nebraska, and imagine what she was thinking to do that. But once she got to Nebraska, she made sure that her family, all of her kids and grandkids voted. She made sure we all voted. And Grandma passed about a year and a half ago, but she was in a wheelchair living in a nursing home at the time of her last election. And she had my Aunt Sherry go, take her to the polls to vote. But all the other members of the nursing home, they voted by mail. What if we take that away? Don't you want your grandmother to be able to vote? Yes. Don't you? Yes. You know, you don't want them to have to go out of their way to do that. Now, my grandmother did that because every year she voted, and she wanted that little sticker that said, I voted today. So if you voted by mail, you didn't get it. But Grandma wanted it. Now, we all stand on their shoulders. They did sacrifices. They moved. They marched. They protested. They did all of that so we can vote, so we can live a fair life, have our voice. Now, Grandma wasn't alive to vote in the last election, but I proudly cast my vote only for a few days later to see a bunch of Karens and clowns down the TCF Center trying to stop the count, trying to disrupt it. What's next? No, it's not. What's next? You know, all of these different forms of voter suppression. So we have to unite, and we have to resist suppression. All right. Hashtag Michigan United. I'm out.
Hey, hey, ho, ho. Voter suppression has
Got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. Voter suppression has got to go.
Hey, hey.
Ho, ho. Voter suppression has got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. Voter suppression has got to go. All right. Now you see how deeply people will be wounded if these laws are allowed to take a place on our code in the state of Michigan. We cannot have that happen. Another testimony today will come from Cindy Reese, who is a board member of MOSES, which stands for Metropolitan Organizing Strategy, Enabling Strength. And strength is what we have here today, because if you think this is it, you've got another thought coming. That's right.
Hello, my name is Cindy Reese, and I am a board member of MOSES, and I am a member of Greater Southern Baptist Church in Detroit. There was a quote that says, "To be a citizen of a country means to fully participate in its functions and to be fully covered by all its protections." 2 weeks ago, I felt like Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks was asked to give up her seat. When I came here, I felt like they wanted me to get off the bus. There was a group of us who came here for the public meeting regarding the voter suppression bills, not one of us, you hear me? Not one of us was allowed to speak. From its beginning, America has not given all its citizens the ability to fully participate, with barriers to voting being one blatant example. In Michigan, during both the 2018 and the 2020 election, we participated by voting in record numbers. Each time, it was the efforts of myself, my sisters, my brothers, my cousins, and other citizens who turned out voters through town hall meetings, phone banks, texting parties, and any other means that we found necessary. In 2018, Moses did a deep public education to make sure people understood the extension of Michigan's voter laws. Moses had over 20 town halls to educate the voters. In 2020, despite the pandemic and the loss of my husband of 50 years because of COVID, I still wanted to fight for the right to vote. There were people like me and many others. We did months of work at visual town halls to get people to utilize the different avenues that were available to vote. These voter suppression bills are a blatant disrespect to the hard work of citizens like myself. These bills are telling Michiganders that we did something wrong by participating fully in our citizenship. These bills are taking us backwards. Amen. We're not going to stand for it. No. The last time I was here that I was allowed to speak, I told them if they keep doing what they're doing, then they gonna keep on seeing Cindy Reese, because I'm gonna keep on coming and standing up for my right. Thank you.
Now that was a testimony that should make you all stop and think.
All right.
What these bills will do to the people of this state. Not only BIPOC people, black and indigenous people of color, but everybody in this state, I don't care what color you are, will suffer if these bills are allowed to become law. So Cindy, we offer our sympathy, but we are thankful that you were here today to share your very poignant story. John Ross Kemp is here today to offer his testimony. John, if you will come forward.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. I'm Josh Rosskamp, and I'm the business agent for IATSE Local 26 Stagehands. I got a couple testimonies to share. One of them is my mom, who is disabled and she had never voted before the 2020 election. She found herself very impassioned to vote this time around. There was a particular politician that she was especially fond of. The laws passed in 2018 made it fairly easy for us to register her to vote, and she became very anxious to do so, to the point where we went grocery shopping one day on one of the few trips that we dared to take her out in the last year, due to her health and the COVID scare, the real pandemic. And she was excited to vote, to the point where we even stopped by her village hall to see when the absentee ballots were going to go out. It was funny. The clerk kind of looked at her and went, we're putting them in the mail tomorrow. And she checked her mail every day for the next week till she got her ballot and was able to vote. But as a stagehand, we find we're in a real unique position where our schedule is not consistent. and many of us vote absentee. Because of the schedule, we just never know when we're going to work. So many of us vote absentee, and the fear is the more they're allowed to suppress the votes with this round of bills, there's just going to be more till they can't lose an election. At least particular politicians that are trying to pass these bills are making it near impossible for people that are represented on the other side of the aisle to vote. As stage hands, I need to be out here and I need to say, we have the right to vote and we need to keep that right. And we can't expect to have to show proof that we were working that day to make reason for us voting absentee. So I stand with Michigan United and Moses and everybody here. And I'd just like to say the stage hands got your back, and we hope to be voting on better things in the future.
Yes. 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 Thank you. Well, as they say, the first shall be last, and the last was supposed to be first. So will Alicia come down, please? Wait a minute. Aisha. Aisha. Here she is. Give her a hand.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How are you guys today?
Good.
My name is Aisha Marbury, and I am a first-time voter this year. I wanted to see a change in my community. I wanted to be a part of the change in my community, and I know that voting was the only way change could happen, directly affecting my community. Change has always been a part of Michigan's culture. Change has always been there. So it has to be acceptable at some point. And so voting for me gave me the opportunity to use a voice that I couldn't directly speak to people. I wanted to see things better in my community. I wanted to see my community become better. I wanted to go to school and to come back and to know that my community was going to stay safe, and so will my right to vote. I know that my vote is important. I know my voice is important. Yeah. So I will continue to use my right to vote, and no one will stop me from using my right to vote, because me, and along with people who have fought long and hard for people of color to be able to vote. So for me to not use my right to vote is unacceptable.
Woo. All right.
That's right.
That's right.
I want to use my voice as a change. I want to see a change in my community, and I want to be a part of the change.
All right. Yeah. All right.
I wanted to see people in my community do better, live better, have access to better things. And I know that voting will help that.
Yes.
So for my right to vote to be impacted hurts. It hurts, because how dare you have the audacity to stop me from voting?
All right.
I work hard. I do what I'm supposed to. I follow the laws. I do everything I'm supposed to. So how can you tell me I can't vote?
That's right.
That's right.
So every time that there's an election, whether it's Senate, Congress, presidential, any form of election, I will be using my voice to stand tall in my community and have the people who are unable to vote. For example, my grandma, during the year 2020 when the worldwide pandemic hit, she wasn't able to go out and vote, so she had to vote by mail. And for that to be taken away or to be infringed upon, it hurts my feelings, because my grandma worked hard to vote. Her mama worked hard to vote. My grandma came from the South where she couldn't vote. So for her to come up north and be able to vote is a privilege. And I will continue to use that privilege in my community to make a bigger change.
That's right.
That's right. All right. From the mouth of our young people.
Yes.
You have seen a spectrum of ages here today, and that should let you know that we are all in this together. At this time, I would like to ask if the press has any questions they would like to ask. So we did a good job because we left nothing unknown and we turned over every stone to expose the ugliness that's going on in our legislature. And now we're going to bring this to a close. And I want you to sing this song from the civil rights era. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on fighting. You can't have my vote. Ain't gonna let old Shirkey turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let old Shirkey turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on fighting.